All right, cool. Okay, let's do this thing.
All right.
All right.
Why don't you start us off?
Yes, indeed. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Beyond the Hunt, a Wild Hunt Festival show. This is the first episode that we've titled Adventurers Roundtable. We hope that this is going to be an ongoing format where we talk about Wild Hunt Festival. Obviously, Fern, Hero. Jake, do you want me to call you Hero or Jake? I have this problem even when we're talking privately.
That's okay. And you've called me both. Jake is perfectly fine.
All right.
I answer to both, I guess.
And Fern, I'll never call you not Fern. So you're just Fern. Even if you're like, yeah, I don't want to be called Fern, I'd be like, I'm sorry. That's just you're Fern.
Everyone calls me that. It's absolutely fine.
Even I do it.
All right, excellent. I kind of miss. Was it Frygun? Was that the typo that I made and that stuck around for a minute?
Frygun?
Frygun. That was a good one. Oh, that was fun. Okay, so the first episode of Mini, where we are going to talk about all things Wild Hunt Festival. We've got a lot planned for Wild Hunt Festival coming down the pike, both soon and long term, and I think we're very excited to kind of pull the curtain back on that tonight. We won't be going over everything that there is to cover with these with the three games that we're bringing to Kickstarter. We're not going to be doing any deep dives. Character analyses or anything like that. That'll come at a later time, and that certainly will not include me. But tonight, we're going to be doing some kind of high-level overview stuff. We want to tell you what we've got coming down the pike as it relates to the crowdfunding campaign, what's included in each of the three games that are going to be on offer in the campaign. And then we're going to get into sort of some, not like in the weeds, but some overview stuff as it pertains to the three products that we're bringing. We're going to talk about our ongoing support for this game. In the future, we're going to talk about Wild Hunt Studios, which is a thing now. And then we will answer any questions that you guys have. So I need to actually have the YouTube chat up. That helps. We got some people watching there. Okay. So there's three of us here. Normally, when there's a show being hosted on the Lion Wing YouTube channel, it's just me. So why are there three people here? Well, that's because we have decided that within Lion Wing, we were going to create a team that was specific to Wild Hunt Festival. That team is called Wild Hunt Studios. This team, which is primarily Jake and Fern, me a little bit, and then Ramo, the principal designer, and then a handful of illustrators, are here to exclusively work on Wild Hunt Festival content. We have long-term plans for this game, and to have long-term plans for any game, obviously, you have to be able to produce content on a regular basis, and that's what we plan to do. So it made sense just to kind of open up sort of subsidiary under the Wild Hunt Studios moniker, so that we could legitimize and show our commitment to Wild Hunt Festival and the ongoing content that we're going to produce for it. So, I'm Bradley Hailstorm. I'm the founder and president of Lion Wing Publishing. You probably know me if you've heard any of the last 40 Lion Wing Talks episodes that I've done. You probably know Fern and Jake if you've been around the Discord for any length of time. They have been stalwarts of our community. They're moderators, now they're designers. They've been playtesters for a long time, and they are two of my go-to folks when it comes to AP players. So, Fern and Jake, I'm going to let you guys introduce yourself.
Yeah. Mind if I take the floor?
Go ahead.
All right. Well, hi everyone. I'm Jake, also known as Hero. I've been on the Discord for a long time, and as you know, I am a massive Wild Hunt Festival head. All of this got started, back when I made a custom character, and we'll get into that story later. But I'm a huge fan of Lion Wing, everything that we do. It's been a true honor to be here talking to you guys now, with where this is now. And all the time that we've spent and memories I've had in this place. So thank you, Bradley, and everyone else here.
Yeah, and I'm Fern. I joined with Gun and Gun, and that was my penchant for competitive card games. But I decided to stick around, mainly because all the games that Lion Wing produces are some of the ones that I really enjoy playing. So I naturally branched out into Wild Hunt Festival, into a lot of TTRPGs that we've been playing, and I stick around. I'm a rules master for the most part on a lot of things, and I love talking with people about games, so I kind of just stayed here forever. And it's kind of bad.
Yes, you did, and we are glad that you did. Were you? I don't think I've ever asked this. Since you guys both jumped in with the more traditional card and board game, did you guys play RPGs before Lion Wing started pivoting to RPGs?
Yeah, so I've played, okay, well, before Lion Wing pivoted, I played my fair share of 5e and like one game of Pathfinder, and like maybe that was it. After you guys pivoted, I spun even harder into TTRPGs. I'm like obsessed with Fabula Ultima now. I've got like a bajillion games in my wheelhouse because
Ooh,
you
that's a
guys
lot of
pivoted
games.
and showed me that. I know, right? Because you guys
Yeah.
pivoted is what turned me, so interested in the way that Japanese TTRPGs just work.
Yep. Uh, Convictor Drive was my first TTRPG outside of D&D, so it kind of just started my adventure into playing TTRPGs, and I have so far loved it.
That's awesome. I love that. I love both of those stories. It's so good. It's always cool, like when you can help bring someone into a genre that they have limited experience with or no experience with in some cases. That was kind of the whole plan for this pivot into RPGs. It's like Japanese TTRPGs have such a unique take on the genre that I think they are great gateways into the larger. Some people say they're not genres. Some people say TTRPGs are mediums. I often just call them genres, but nevertheless, I'm glad that you guys found Line Wing when you did, and it's been awesome because over time, obviously, our relationship with one another has evolved and changed, and now we are here with this latest iteration of our relationship with one another, and that is working on Wild Hunt Festival stuff together. Obviously, both Fern and Jake are the primary ones producing content. I'm just kind of there overseeing things, trying to act like I know what I'm talking about every once in a while. So it's been great working with you guys on this. What has also been great has been the community support and engagement for Wild Hunt Festival over the years. So I don't even know if people know this, or they may have because they read the tweet or whatever. So Wild Hunt Festival stands as our most successful Kickstarter to date. It had the most backers and it raised the most funds. So it was a very popular game at the time when it came out, which is funny because I was like half convinced it wasn't like gonna hit at all, only because like 4 months prior we had just kickstarted Testament and Wild Hunt Festival, while very different games, have a ton of overlap. And I was like, oh my God, I'm releasing another boss battler 4 months after the last boss battler. Like, does anyone even want this thing? And then come to find out, a lot of people wanted it. So over the years, obviously, we haven't done a lot with board games in several years, but and I haven't really wanted to go back to board games, frankly, but I always held a spot for Wild Hunt Festival. I knew I wanted to return to Wild Hunt Festival. And here we are returning to Wild Hunt Festival. It took us a while. I apologize for that. But these things take a while, and now we're coming back swinging big with this one. It was important that if we revisited Wild Hunt Festival, that we didn't just kind of release an incremental release. Too much time has gone by for starters, and also I don't think that's what people would want who like Wild Hunt Festival. I mean, people want. It's funny, the fan base for this is a little, it's like people are really into it, which is cool. So we kind of knew that we needed to come out with something big, and that's when we decided, hey, Ramo and Liner Note, the team that owns the IP and is the principal designer behind the Kratia series and then the Wild Hunt Festival sub-series within the Kratia universe, they released a follow-up to the first Wild Hunt Festival, which we've dubbed Dankai Survey Brigade. And we kind of knew that we wanted to bring this game to Kickstarter at some point. But as we were getting into the development, we, meaning the three of us on this show right here, as we were getting into the localization and the development of Dankai, it just sort of spun into this thing of like, hey, we should not just release Dankai. We should try to release more content in this Kickstarter because, hey, more content's good for everyone, right? And that's when we looked at, maybe we could release a second product alongside of it. And then a second product turned into a third product. And the next thing you know, we've got a trilogy of games coming to Kickstarter. So Fern, Jake, what can fans expect from this upcoming campaign?
Go ahead, Fern. I'll let you take this one.
All right. Yeah, so not only are we releasing Ramo's original Donkai Serai Brigade pretty much entirely faithfully as to his creation, we are adding in a little packet of ours we like to call Rights of Nature, which involves enough characters to make the Donkai Serai Brigade expansion standalone, because if you've followed Ramo a lot, he only released 2 characters with that expansion. And that's not enough to make a team. So we managed to pad out the roster so that you can play it with only Donkai Serai Brigade. And then we're adding on another little packet of ours that is not going to be standalone, that goes into more of a story mode, because we thought story mode was awesome, and having only 2 routes while in the base game was 8 bosses and a lot of content. We thought we might as well try to make a new one.
So we've got Donkai, which, by the way, like, I half hate that we chose to name it Donkai Survey Brigade, because that's such a hard thing to say quickly. Like, I fuck it up every time I say it, or I just sound like I've got marbles in my mouth when I say it. So maybe, like, I love the name as it appears in writing. I hate having to say it. So we've got Donkai, and then we've got... Within Donkai, obviously, as Fern just said, more stuff was added to it to make it a heftier release. But then, we've also got... We decided that it would be a good idea to go back and to look at the original Wild Hunt Festival game, Kradia Wild Hunt Festival 2021, that is, and enhance it. Tweak it some, do some upgrades. Jake, do you want to talk about Anniversary Edition?
Yeah, absolutely. So first things first, the pivotal thing that comes out of Anniversary Edition is some of the community feedback that we took after a while after the original released. And I think the most notable and most important piece of that is the enlarged character boards, also featuring new UI. The charge attacks and skill attacks are bigger cards now as well, alongside the full character art on the front of the card rather than on the back. Now, the backs are still the same, but I think that was kind of what people were looking for the most. On top of that, certain things like the boss rage tracker didn't have a 0 on it. We added a 0 for all of those. What else? What other things are like super on the forefront of my mind?
0s for mana, 0s for HP,
Yes.
0s for basic attack buff. You don't have to take those little plastic markers and remove them from the board. We tried to remove all out instances of that.
Yeah,
And then,
they will always sit
we
on
went
your
in-
board.
Yep. And then we went in and cleaned up a lot of rules, wordings, inconsistencies, everything that you'd have to look at the board and then look at the game and then say, like, what does this mean in context and what does it actually mean in terms of rules? We have tried to solidify all of that in consistent and clear wording.
Yeah, and of course, in future episodes, we'll go back and we'll take a look at some of those changes we've made. Most notably, I think the one that we battled on for the longest was that Lemugia challenge mode boss, where I was interpreting something one way, and it wasn't the way that Ramo had intended it, and of course we were at like 2 or 3 layers of separation, because it's like me communicating to Bradley, to the translator, to Ramo, and back and forth, and there was just kind of like no good way for us to ever figure that out until a multitude of years later, when I finally beat every single boss in the game. So, there's that. Those things should not cause issues anymore. But of course, Fern and I are always here, double, triple, quadruple checking on those kinds of things, because rules quandaries are important to squash when we aim to make sure that every iteration of Kradia going forwards is fully compatible with each other.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So we're bringing 3 products to Kickstarter. All 3 are going to be compatible with one another, but they're also going to be compatible with Kradia Wild Hunt Festival 2021. So everything that you get through this campaign, you're going to be able to play with the previous game if you pick that up. It was important that if we came back to Wild Hunt Festival, and especially if we did an anniversary edition release of the original game, that people who backed the game the first time didn't feel like they needed to like grab the anniversary to be compatible and play the new content. So it was important that they felt like their purchase, their pledge was being honored by allowing them not to pick up Anniversary Edition if they don't want to, but they can pick up Dankai, they can pick up the Side Stories release, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and they can integrate it right into their play with their original game. Now, as Jake said, the Anniversary Edition kind of blows up a lot of the components. Almost all of the components have been enlarged. I threw a picture up there on the screen that you'll be able to see in the top left corner of the stream, just showing a size difference between the original hero boards and the new hero boards. So we blew them up to about, what was it, guys? Was it 1.25 times the size of the original boards? Something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah, they're now an A5 size, so kind of in line with a lot of our TTRPG releases lately of being A5 in size. So they're much bigger, and as you can see from that image there, just huge UI and graphical presentation overhaul. The game looks so much cleaner now. It shows off more of the art. You can tell Rama was really he's really iterated nicely upon his original design. And it feels like with Anniversary Edition, it's like the sort of the definitive edition in a lot of ways, because it feels like this is the way that you're supposed to play Kratia. So that means if you don't pick up Anniversary, but you do pick up Dankai and Side Stories, obviously Dankai and Side Stories are adhering to the new component sizes. So you'll have some mismatch in component sizes with both cards and hero boards, but if that doesn't bother you, then there you go. If it does bother you, buy Anniversary Edition. So why crowdfunding? I think I can kind of go back to before, and it illustrates the point of why crowdfunding for this campaign. First off, this was a huge success the first time around. Obviously, we would love to replicate that success, but also it made more sense now than ever to take these games to Kickstarter because it is 3 games. So we've never done a trilogy pack in a single campaign like this. So obviously cost is far more than it would be if we were just printing one of these. Now, each of the products on offer are different in terms of the scope of each release. So Anniversary Edition packs in the original components along with physically printed versions of all the DLC that we released. So it's got a ton of content. Dankai doesn't have as much as base Anniversary Edition, but it still has a lot. And it's what we're considering kind of like a full expansion. And then we've got our third product that we haven't talked about yet, and we will in a moment, but it's coming from sort of a sub-series of the Wild Hunt Festival universe, and that is what we're calling Wild Hunt Festival Side Stories. These are small blister pack releases that we plan to release with greater frequency than we plan to release the full-blown expansions. We'll get into that later, but the point is it's a lot of content and a lot of components, and printing costs are miserable right now, and freight costs are miserable right now, and tariffs are miserable right now. So like utilizing Kickstarter for its most primal purpose, and that is not a marketing platform, though it very much so is that, but for this release specifically, utilizing it for its main purpose of like funds. This is probably going to be one of the most expensive projects that we've ever printed. In fact, I think the only project that will be that is more expensive was Shin Megami, just because we printed at such a high quantity for that project. This is coming in though second. So crowdfunding makes a lot of sense in that regard. And of course, it's a great marketing tool. So let's what do we want to go into? Do we want to go into what's in each game? Do we want to talk about why we're doing Anniversary Edition? Do we want to talk about what we plan to do with the universe? Where do you guys want to go from here? Because I think all of those are viable directions.
Good question. I think we should hit all of them. But let's dive into the fun stuff first.
Well, Jake, what do you consider the fun stuff?
Oh, well, that's a great question. So I think the most fun thing for us to tell the people is no. We should talk about what's coming in these games first before I get too excited about what's to come with the future.
So, Fern, do you want to take that or you want me to?
Sure, I got it. All right. So Anniversary Edition, as I think we said before, is the original release of the game with all physical DLC or all digital DLC now physical into it. Major upsides and components, everything that you see in the original box, plus all of those like weird like print out your own packs that we did before. That's all coming in Anniversary Edition. So if you already have the base game, you don't have to buy it to see any new content, but if you want to upgrade your pack or if you're coming into the series, then you can absolutely pick up a copy of the Anniversary Edition, and it is a wonderful game already. Like the base game, Wild Hunt Festival was amazing. What we've got coming in Donkai Server Brigade is Ramo's original dungeon mode, which is a roguelike-ish, story-ish mode where you go through, you explore a bunch of different areas, you fight some bosses, and you learn more about, I think he's calling it the Deadlands or the Golden City of Tira. There's this entire story about how Galateo got a new power, a new outfit, and some interesting lore going on into the origination of the monsters showing up from that area. In addition to all of that coming in Donkai Server Brigade is a little packet of ours containing 3 extra characters, an extra 2 challenge mode bosses, a really cool reimagination of ailments. Not in a way that breaks the game or anything, but some new ways to play with ailments, and a new Ikuna that, just because we like Ikunas, and we think that giving players more options in terms of that, and in terms of how they experiment with the game is also just an amazing thing. Donkai Server Brigade, as we stated, is standalone. You can pick up just that and play through Donkai Server Brigade in its entirety without having any other Wild Hunt Festival content, which is going to be amazing for people to just pick up that and see what's happening with the lore. And then finally, we've got a brand new packet which contains a story mode boss fight, which is a run of bosses from levels 1 to 4, 2 new attackers, which are, I think, Jake and I's favorites in terms of the things we created, some unique items, and another Ikuna, because we like Ikunas.
Yeah, definitely. I can't wait to talk about an Aria of Light and Shadow. We're gonna worry about that, again, probably in a future episode when we've got the art coming for them. So that's gonna be really great. Want to talk about it a lot, but of course I don't want to spoil too much because that'll be for you guys to check out when it comes to your hands. But yeah, so that's what's coming in this Kickstarter. You're looking at 3 awesome games with plenty to dig into. Old fans, new fans. It's going to be an awesome way to get ready for what's to come in the future and to get yourself, set up and check out some really cool new things.
Yeah, I'd also add, this is a small thing, but I like this kind of thing. For Anniversary Edition, we're also getting brand new box art. So, the original Kratia Wild Hunt Festival box art was very awesome, right? A lot of people commented on how good that art piece was. When we revisited it, obviously, there it is. There you go. When we revisited the Wild Hunt Festival and came up with the idea for Anniversary Edition, it was important for us to make this feel like a special release. That for people who have never played Wild Hunt Festival, this is like the perfect jumping off point. Like Anniversary Edition is absolutely what you should buy if you're like, I want to get into this. I didn't pick up the original game, but I want to get into it with these new releases. At minimum, grab Anniversary Edition. Hopefully you grab all 3. Grab Anniversary Edition. But for those who are returning, who did support the original game and still have it, we also wanted to give them an incentive to pick up the game as well. Beyond the things that Fern talked about. And for me, like a new piece of box art is a really great way to make the game feel like, okay, so this is a new release. And you're going to feel that Anniversary Edition is a new release when you open up the box, because the box is going to be bigger in and of itself, but then all the components are bigger, right? And you've got all the stuff that you didn't have in the original Kratia Wild Hunt Festival. And so the box art is going to be new. It's going to feature some new characters. We brought in one of the artists from Fabula Ultima. Kathy is she is working on the box art. She's also doing art for Side Stories, an aria of light and shadow, and she's had a great way of sort of emulating that, like what made the original art of Kratia work so well. And her art, she was able to mimic a lot of the shading and designs and soft edges that Kratia is known for, while also kind of putting her own spin on things. So her box art is really striking, but she's also doing some of the character art. No, not some. She's doing all of the character art for an aria of light of shadow and light and shadow. It's always interesting when you have to bring in a new illustrator, because either A, you're replacing an old illustrator for whatever reason, or B, the old illustrator just simply is not available to do the work anymore. And so you are required to find someone new. And that's what we were faced with about halfway through the development of Dankai. We were told by Liner Note and Ramos specifically, the principal designer of this, that we no longer had access to the artist who was doing the character art. And so that like threw us into a bit of a tailspin, right? Because Wild Hunt Festival is partly known for its awesome art. And as you can see, a lot of the characters, if you're watching us in the Discord, you see pretty much all the characters that are going to be on offer for this particular campaign, sans the aria of light and shadow characters, Rui and Harno. But when we realized we didn't have that artist anymore, it was like, oh no, like this art is so key to what makes this game work. And so we then went on a hunt. We talked with Ramo. He gave us some names and some people. We talked with them, and I don't know where Fern and Jake stand on this, but like I just was not happy with his recommendations. Not that they were bad artists; they were awesome artists, but they were not what I was looking for in terms of producing more Wild Hunt Festival art that looked like it could sit alongside the original art and people wouldn't necessarily know that it was done by a new artist. So, and then Jake, I think it was you, right, who introduced me to Kathy. And I was a little nervous because I'm like, I don't know how this is going to work. And like, I really wanted to work with a Japanese illustrator. But this all just made sense. And once she showed me what she could do, she sent me like some line work and I was like, okay, we're good. We're good.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I was just as nervous too. I mean, having read, the plethora of Fabula Ultima and just being absolutely amazed by the art, and then I'm at a convention for my game, and all of a sudden there's her booth with all of her art, and I was like, wait, isn't that Fabula Ultima? And go freaking figure. Introduce myself, talk a little bit about the game, and here we are now. She's awesome. Really an incredible asset that we've landed ourselves for this project.
Yeah, it's been great. So, why was it so important to find a new artist? Well, not just because we needed some art for these releases that we're taking to Kickstarter, but because, as I mentioned in the opening, we've got long-term plans for this, for Wild Hunt Festival. So, first things first as it pertains to that, you'll notice that I am not calling it Kratia and I'm not calling it Kratia Wild Hunt Festival unless I'm referring to the 2021 release, or unless I'm saying Kratia as it pertains to the larger universe that these games sit in. And that is because at this point, Lion Wing has kind of taken the ball with Wild Hunt Festival and are digging deep into only Wild Hunt Festival. There's a larger universe, the Kratia universe, that has a bunch of games attached to it. Wild Hunt Festival is just one of those games attached to the Kratia universe. Ramo, however, likes to release a lot of different types of games. He likes to do them in the shared universe of Kratia, but all of his, quote, Kratia games are very different. There's like a trick-taking game. There's, of course, the boss battler game. He's got like a matching kind of puzzle-esque game. He's got more of a traditional board game type game with Garden of Adventures. And then he's got his new game coming out that I'm not entirely sure what it is.
Rabbitopia. It seems almost like a Catan, like, I don't want to say engine builder, but more of like a resource gathering something kind of game.
Yeah, so he's the quintessential creative, right? Like he doesn't want to spend too much time in any one genre because he wants to keep exploring different ideas that he has, and I love that. For us, we just really wanted to dig deep into the boss battler. while Twilight Ravine and Garden of Adventures and Rabbitopia, I don't know about Rabbitopia yet. Obviously, no one's played it, but those other games, fine. It's good stuff. But it's the boss battler that ultimately brought Lion Wing to the dance, and that's the one that we want to keep dancing with. So we went to Rama and said, hey, what if we at Lion Wing just started producing original brand new content for Wild Hunt Festival, and you can release this stuff, you can localize it, and you can release it in your market, but like we just want this to be something that we keep producing content for, and you can absolutely produce content for it as well, and you can design stuff, we'll localize it, and we'll bring it in to this larger vision that we have, but we really kind of want to like do this ourselves. We kind of want to use your world and your engine, and then we want to build everything else ourselves. And Rama's a super cool guy, and he basically was like, "Yeah, okay." And that was it. And so with that, we decided, all right, it's not really Kratia Wild Hunt Festival anymore, because we're not dealing with the Kratia series. We're dealing with the sub-series of Wild Hunt Festival. So I said, you know what? We're axing the Kratia name from this entirely. Not to mention, I never called the game Kratia. I've come to find out that a lot of other people did. A lot of other people, I think Jake and Fern, just called it Kratia, and I always called it Wild Hunt Festival. But I said, you know what, we're lopping off the Kratia. This isn't a Kratia game, it's a Wild Hunt Festival game. And so, with that, how we ultimately got here, we want to have multiple releases for this game. And you're seeing that. That's part of the reason why we also brought 3 games to Kickstarters. We wanted to show people that we are committed to this series. And we wanted to show kind of the 3 types of content that we plan on releasing for this game. We've got like our big boxes, which is Anniversary Edition. We've got our full-on expansions, which is Donkai. And then we've got our side stories, or if you're familiar with MMORPGs, it's more of like content patch releases. And that is kind of where an Aria of Light and Shadow fit into this. We're calling those releases side stories. These are blister pack type releases. They're not even going to come in boxes. They're literally going to come in blister packs. So it's going to be a couple characters, maybe a boss or 2, something to that effect. It's not going to be something big, but we're going to release these more consistently, more frequently in the lead up to the next big expansion. And then those blister packs and their content will likely also be dropped into that next full expansion box set. So we'll also be releasing some digital content in here as well that will then be physicalizing into these expansion sets as well. So that's kind of like the larger view of what we want to do here. Guys, what did I miss as it pertains to kind of moving forward as only Wild Hunt Festival and the long-term plans of what we hope to do with this?
Yeah, so what I definitely want to add and like be solidified in this point is that Fern and I have made a lot of content already, and noting and making sure that things are coming out on the correct schedule and when they're intended to be. You can, at the very least, know that we already have at least a year's worth of content, if not more, already prepared. Like all the way up through the next core box, give or take. So we, at least, you know that, Fern and I kind of just go nuts on tangents all the time. But I think that you can trust us to make sure that Wild Hunt Festival stays alive and well, as long as, shipping and making art, et cetera, comes in the right waves.
So the plan is, tentative plan, right? These are Lion Wing timelines, all right? So like it's plus or minus 15 months. An expansion box set every 18 months-ish. A side stories release every 6 to 12 months. So Fern and Jake have been blowing me up about like bringing this into existence for a long time. Like for 2 years, I would say, right?
It has been 3 years since development started.
Okay, see, my sense of time is already showing here. This is why all of our projects are late. I say 2 years and it's been 3. Sorry.
I had to scroll back up in my DMs with Fern to find when we actually started.
Yeah, so they've been like blowing me up about doing this for the longest time, and I was like, guys, I can't worry about that right now. I got all these RPGs, whatever. And their perseverance and their tenacity and their will to not give up, and their desire to just, even when I would not even talk to them about it, just to create more content in hopes that one day I would talk more about it, I think shows that we're really committed to this. And that's where the Wild Hunt Studios thing comes in. So Jake and Fern are going to be producers within that game development studio. And I think Wild Hunt Festival is in good hands because of their passion and how good they are at designing these characters. So a little inside baseball. A couple weeks ago, I was like, "Hey guys, this is for way future release. Like I designed this character. I want to put him in front of you, and I want you to do your thing with it and like turn this into a viable thing. Because you guys know this engine very well." And so we have this meeting. I talk them through for like an hour and a half of like what I want from this character and like what I had designed. And then I got to go, and I come back like the next day, and they're like, "Okay, yeah, so we built this thing out totally, and we put it into the format, and it's ready to go." I'm like, "Oh my God." So this is the stuff they live and breathe. And I like, it's the right team. It's the right two folks to be captaining this ship. All right. So, that being said, do we want to talk anything specific about Dankai that we haven't already identified in the larger overview of what the game is?
Yeah, why not? So, like we've already stated before, Dankai is partially an entire new expansion made by Ramo, right? It's got 2 characters. It's got this really cool new game mode where all your characters, for those of you who are familiar with Kradia, there I go, using it. If you're familiar with Wild Hunt Festival, your characters start out at level 4. You're rogueliking your way through this little shuffled up card map that you put out in front of you. You then fight a boss depending upon which areas you encountered, and you do it again, and then you fight a final boss, and you've got a couple different endings to adventure through. It's really neat. We have more to talk about that later on, but also, I think Fern pretty much kind of encapsulated it all already, that, Dankai is also like a 2-part deal where you're getting one of our full miniaturized expansions within a product that was kind of already made by Ramo. So that's about the most I can say without like deep diving into the rules right now.
Yeah, Dankai it sits in this weird space because it's like it's half Ramo stuff and half Jake and Fern stuff. So the Dankai that is already released by Liner Note and Ramo is not the Dankai that we will be releasing. We will have their release inside our release, but then we're going to have additional content within our Dankai Survey Brigade release, which is really cool. I love that was the thing. And I love that Ramo, Jake and Fern, like you guys have talked to him so much. We have a special chat just set up, and he's super accessible. And very willing, like from the start, guys, he was just very willing to like hear out what you had and worked with you in terms of like design philosophies and to kind of put some parameters on what he wants to see out of his game world. But by and large, you guys were just kind of let free to like do your own thing, and then you just check it with him to make sure he was okay. You'd put it in front of him and that kind of thing, and he'd give it the authorization of, yeah, that sounds good, go ahead. But he's been such an important part of us digging into Wild Hunt Festival and kind of making it a larger Lion Wing thing. So I love that Dankai is a part Lion Wing product, part Liner Note product. While we won't do a deep dive into the characters in Dankai, can we at least talk about the category of characters that folks will be getting in Dankai?
Sure, yeah. So For Ramo's side of things, can I name drop here? Is that okay?
What are you name dropping? I don't.
Just the names of the new characters.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Cool. All right. So, as we mentioned earlier, on the Ramos side, you're getting two new characters. One is Galateo, where we've donned him Galateo Survey Brigade. He'll be donning a new look, and he will still be a healer. The other character on Ramos' side, her name is Charlona. For those of you viewing on the Discord, you can see one unfamiliar character on Fern's background. She is an attacker. Very, very cool. I like her design a lot. I like her mechanics a lot. For the Rights of Nature side of Donkai Survey Brigade, or the Jake and Fern content, you are also getting three new characters. One is a healer named Matsuri. The next is one to my side here. His name is Kemuri. He is a specialist who is capable of becoming both a attacker and defender. And then farther on that side is Myra, and she is also an attacker. She will be mixing the way that you think about your character's ailments up quite a bit. It's a really cool time. All right. And yeah, those are your characters.
How many new bosses are people going to get with Donkai?
So if I recall correctly, Donkai features, well, from our side of things, from the Jake and Fern side, you're getting two new bosses, both challenge bosses, and they'll each be featuring a unique new ailment that you'll have to keep track of. So there's that. Get excited. And also on the Ramo side of things, Donkai itself, I believe features, 4 or 5 new bosses?
6.
I believe. Thank you. 6.
3
6 new bosses. Each of those you'll be able to tackle in the new dungeon survey mode.
So, Fern.
So yeah, plenty of new content, plenty of fun mechanics.
Yeah, and we'll save the mechanics and those gameplay deep dives for later videos, right? This is just episode 1. But Fern, is Donkai finished? Can you let the cat out of the bag on that? Is it totally done?
Yeah, Donkai is fully translated, fully implemented. I think the only thing we need to do is touch up the actual book, because it comes with a storybook that is pretty large. So that just needs to be cleaned up, and everything else is on cards, on paper. Well, not on paper. It's on digital files. All of those cards are all made and ready to be printed basically right now. Should we actually start printing them right now, but if we got to go through the crowdfunding and everything. But yeah, everything else is completely made. All of our stuff on the Rights of Nature side is all made as well, so everything is ready to just be inserted and printed as soon as possible for this specific release on Donkai.
And that's the same with Anniversary Edition too, right?
Yes, Anniversary is also completely finished. We just want to do a final wording pass on everything, absolutely, to make sure that everything is correct. But yeah, everything, all the art and all of the design files, they're all complete and ready to go.
And Aria is mostly complete. We're waiting on illustrations for the 2 new characters there. And then we've got a format.
Yes, and the 4 bosses.
Yeah. This is one of those rare times where I think we'll be able to get to print a little bit quicker than a lot of our other board games, just because so much of it is already print ready, including the files. So a lot of times when we've gotten a Kickstarter with past projects, we've mostly been print ready. However, not to the point where like the files are already like print formatted and ready to be shipped off to the manufacturer for them to just start, producing proofs and then get to mass production. This is one of those cases where like our folders currently for these games look like what our folders look like in past projects when we're getting ready to go into mass production. So it feels very, very complete right now, which feels good. Printing in this current environment is really challenging. And so to be able to come to Kickstarter and to have the files formatted is really great, and not something that always has or can happen with a lot of projects, but it has happened here and it can happen here, which is great. Okay, so Fern, you brought up the book that comes with Dankai, and it's like a massive Word document, right?
Yeah. So, in the original, I think it was Chinese and Japanese. The book is about 79 pages, and I think A4 size, and that's because of the survey cards. They each have a number that tells you what page to turn to read what happens when you go to that location. And I think the last one was number 79. So the book is 79-ish, maybe more, pages of content, and it's all stories, events, things that you'll go through in your survey mode. You may not go through all of them. In fact, you won't, because you won't visit all however many locations there are in one run. But the idea is that throughout your playthroughs of Dankai Server Brigade, you'll eventually read all the pages and get this kind of piecing together of what the underlying cause is for this random city to show up in a desert.
So when all said and done and this thing is translated and edited and formatted, it's basically going to be the size of our most recently retail released TTRPG Steam Build Writers. So you've got a TTRPG size book within this board game. What I love about this is not how much it costs to translate these things, because I don't love that at all. What I do love, however, is this game. I think Ramo realized that a lot of people liked the lore and were interested in the lore of Karate Wild Hunt Festival. And I'm not, definitely Ramo had some lore planned out in his head when he made Karate Wild Hunt Festival. He's got some general ideas about the Karate universe, and that comes through in all the different Karate games. However, I don't think he was as interested in exploring the lore as a lot of players were. I think he underestimated how interested at least Western players were in learning about the lore of Wild Hunt Festival. And so with Dankai, it almost feels like, and I haven't talked to him about this, but it almost feels like he was saying, okay, hold on a second. I've got something here. People are into this. I got to figure this stuff out. I got to start fleshing out an actual world, because that's what people are wanting. And that I feel like that more like narrative centric, story present concept is a lot more present in Dankai than it was in the original release. Is that just me, guys, or did you feel that, or have you felt that way too?
I certainly agree that we've talked about this before, right? Pull back the curtain just a little bit. The original character booklets were written by you.
Yes.
That in and of itself kind of explains to me that Ramo wasn't necessarily prepared for us to want to deep dive into these characters and the lore of the world, which is kind of cool, because that means, Dankai Survey Brigade is a way to do that. But on the same token, it gives us a lot of room to work with as we go further. Because, of course, during the design process for the Rights of Nature characters, when we would give Ramo, hey, this is what we want the character to look like, this is how they are, this is just, just some things about them, he would take them, look at them, and go, okay, great. Makes a couple changes here and there, and then boom, character's done. So, obviously he's letting us take, good headwind and run with it, but also making sure that it's within his, mental universe that Karadia exists in.
Yeah, it's great that in Dankai he started fleshing out some of these larger concepts and the larger worldview of Karadia, because we've got something to dig into. And at the same time, it's also kind of great that he doesn't have the world totally fleshed out, because for Lion Wing stuff, we're able to create stories, not necessarily lore from scratch, because I think Ramos still wants ownership of that. I think he will allow us to create some lore, but it still allows us this chance to tell stories and take some artistic freedoms and some creative liberties with telling these stories, because not everything has been totally blocked out just yet with how this world works and all of its intricacies. So it's actually like worked to our advantage that he doesn't have like a Wild Hunt Festival Bible. I asked that like 2 weeks ago, actually, that exact wording. I was like, guys, does Rom have like a Bible or an encyclopedia of like what are the religious views of people in Eastern Cradia? What are like the geopolitics? Like what is this stuff? And both you guys were like, I don't think he has that. And I went to him and I was like, I don't think I have that. So it's been cool though, because then Jake and Fern can come up with something like Aria, and tell the story that is their story that takes place in Cradia, in that universe. And there are all these touch points and tether points to the existing lore, but then they've also kind of just made it their own thing, their own story. And I think you're going to see a lot more of that as time goes on. And quite frankly, like I said, Ramo's a lot more concerned with just the larger Cradia IP and just making all these different games. So that like sort of like, I mean, he definitely cares, don't get me wrong, right guys? Like he cares about his game world.
Absolutely.
But not being like totally tied to Wild Hunt Festival and like having a slight tinge of not caring has been very helpful, I think, for you guys in creating new content.
Yeah. And that'll definitely be helpful going forwards.
For sure. Okay. So we've gone over the highlights of Dankai. Aria of Shadow, our first content patch release, our first blister pack, or as we're calling it, our first side stories release. Much intentionally so, smaller in scope than Dankai, and certainly much smaller than Anniversary. This game was actually not going to be a part of the crowdfunding campaign. For the longest time, this was just going to be an Anniversary plus Dankai crowdfunding campaign. And then Aria was already done though. Like that thing was already there. It still needed to be illustrated, but we just weren't going to include it in the first Kickstarter. And then I went to Jake and Fern at some point. I was like, guys, what do you think about just doing this as like a trilogy of games? Like, because this would give us an opportunity for people to tangibly see and buy what these smaller inter-expansion releases are going to be. And I think we all kind of agreed like, oh yeah, that's absolutely, because you get to see all three product types that we're going to release within the Wild Hunt Festival universe, including the very small bite-sized release of Aria. What Aria allows us to do is to not only release smaller releases in between the bigger ones, to keep folks coming back to the game and to keep some sort of mind share of Wild Hunt Festival out there. It also allows us to produce content that is really A, cost effective on our end, but also B, price effective on the customer's end. So when you look at the tiers, and we're not going to go through the tiers tonight of what's going to be offered in this campaign, but you'll be able to buy in, even if like for Aria, you'll be able to buy in at $15. That's going to be the cost of most of our blister pack or our side stories content, so plus or minus $5 depending on the size of the particular side stories release. But this one, an Aria of Light and Shadow, is a $15 release. So we've got multiple price points starting at $15 on up to about $150. So like you can buy in at whatever you want to throw in. Like we've got something for you. You want to spend the least amount of money possible, but still want something? Cool. $15 gets you Aria. You want to go all in and you want to get everything and some additional bells and whistles that comes with a collector's box set that has its own box art. You can do that at the high end. That's a high tier. That's $150. If you want to just go someplace in between, you could grab 2 releases. If you grab 3 releases, you get a 2-for-1 deal, so you get 1 for free. So there are multiple things here. And then we're going to have some really cool add-ons this time around. And just as a reminder, in case anyone's watching who backed the game the first time around, so I mentioned this in the showcase last year. I got to mention it again because I think it's really important because I want people to know that I want to make good on our fuck ups. So we in the original campaign, we offered plastic character boards, right? Plastic hero boards, and they came out like shit. They were super thin. They felt thinner than the actual like cardstock of the cardboard standard hero boards came on, and they just sucked. At the time, especially because it was our third Kickstarter, only our second Kickstarter that we had launched fully by ourselves because Testament was a joint Kickstarter with Japanime. Like, I just simply did not have the capital to go back and reprint stuff that was messed up from the first release. Obviously, here we are like 4 years later. Lion Wing's in a very different financial situation. We can do that now. So what's going to happen here? If you bought those plastic character boards in the original campaign and you thought they sucked too, we are going to offer those plastic character boards as they were meant to be offered in that original campaign back in 2021, or was it 2020? And you're going to get those for free. You'll have to pay the shipping because shipping sucks right now. I can't eat that cost, but I can eat the cost of just printing brand new plastic character boards. So you're going to be able to get those. So at minimum, you could show up for this campaign and get the free plastic character boards of the quality that you wanted the first time around, and you only have to pay the shipping. And the shipping is not expensive, by the way. So I'm not like gouging anyone on shipping. You'll just have to pay it, and it's yours. And then you can dip out. You know. So like it really feels like this is the first campaign where we've got something for almost literally anyone and everyone, which I'm really excited about because we've never been able to do that before. I am hoping because this game is cost accessible, but also plays upon a lot of the stuff that makes TTRPGs so special. My hope is that we've cultivated this big TTRPG audience over the past couple years. My hope is that people who don't typically play board games will check this one out. A, because you can play it solo. You don't need a group if you don't want to. Totally solo. In fact, that's how I've almost exclusively played this game over the past, I guess 5 years, because I was, maybe 6 years, because I was scouting before I brought it to Kickstarter. But anyway, that's how I've always played it. But because it has so much TTRPG in it, and because it can be played solo or up to 4 players or any combination in between, like, my hope is that those folks will check this out too, especially because Dankai goes into deep lore and it's got this, I don't know, guys, would you call like, it's not a choose your own adventure book. Like, that's not what that game book is, but it definitely kind of feels a little bit like that at times. Would you agree?
In a sense, yes. I feel like it's more to bring another roguelike game that kind of did this in a way that was more storytelling based. You know how Hades is a roguelike, but it focuses a lot of narrative story building. I feel like that's how Ramo kind of made Donkai's storybook, in that there's a lot of dialogue, a lot of conversations, a lot of like just pieces of lore that you run into. And while it is kind of in a choose your own adventure style of like just how the book is laid out, it's more of you're expected to slowly piece together all these different parts of lore in whatever order you find them in, and build together an overarching plot from there.
Yeah, I think its format is what really makes me feel like it's like a choose your own adventure, because you're flipping through pages and you're flipping to this one, then you're flipping to another one earlier in the book. So yeah, I hope people will give it a shot who don't typically play board games, because I think there's probably something here for you, for sure. Okay, in terms of Aria, I talked about like conceptually like what the side stories product is. Is there anything else we want to say about that right now?
If you wanted to dabble a little bit more in what side stories can have, because this one, of course, like we've said, is 2 characters in a story mode, but we do have interests in, you know, we mentioned the small range of price for a side stories expansion. These are meant to be small, help supplement the time in between our releases with the big core boxes. Not only could this have, let's say, a story mode or a character or two. Some ideas we've tossed around is adding more achievements, because unfortunately Donkai does not have any, but we could certainly go back and retroactively add that in a future side story. What else? We can do even smaller packs if you want to add a bunch of items, or a handful of new ikunas, etc. There's lots of different ways that a side story can be manipulated to make it of value, as a product.
I want to add on to that in the fact that side stories allows us, specifically the two of us, to make content that is kind of its own story in a way. Because a lot of the times when you're playing through Wild Hunt Festival, if you fight a challenge boss, there's no story leading up to it, and there's really no overarching plot involved with the challenge bosses or the characters in their interactions. So side stories is a way for us to set a narrative and do a lot of, I want to say, extra content for that isn't specifically printed out. So for an Aria of Light and Shadow, a lot of that side story is supplemented through text. So one of the interesting things that happened in the original release is in your story mode things, there was a quest booklet where you got to see details about the monster, and there was a slight blurb between fights. We wanted to expand upon that and tell an actual story about our two characters in that side story, growing as adventurers, going through challenges together, and ultimately coming to a conclusion at the end of the story. A conclusion that I feel like is really cool, and we won't spoil for you because it's really awesome, and we want to supplement that with a lot of just context. So things like text released simultaneously with the product, things like text in between the boss fights, things like text that you might have to go look for, just things like that. So we can keep adding to the side story content, and you only have to buy the game components of it. So we might end up throwing up a text document on the Langwing website at some point just to be like, here's a piece of the story that you can just look at.
Yeah, that's what I love about Aria, especially. It tells a meaningful, interesting, emotional, self-contained story. Like, Aria feels like a very self-contained thing. And so I love the fact that if someone really just wanted to play Aria, you probably need some components of Anniversary Edition at least. But like, Aria feels like this micro game within this larger thing that we're doing. And while not every side stories release will be this, like Jake said, it could just be some item cards. And that's what I meant by the like plus or minus $5 for these things. Cause like, if it's an item card pack, that might be a $10 release. If it's Aria plus a little bit more content, that might be a $20 release. But I like that, especially with Aria, like it's a very, not a lot of components, right? But does a lot with a little. And so Fern also touched on something else there that we hope to do. And I don't know, like, how deep we're going to dig on this or how regularly we will do it. It is something we've talked about. It is something that I want to do. It is something that I wanted to do with Maiden Knight Saga. And then the cost was just way too big because we had to localize the whole thing. But having almost like a web novel series, which Maiden Knight had already, we had to localize and all that stuff. And I ultimately chose not to, even though we did localize, even though I didn't tell anyone. We did localize the very first chapter that never released it. But that's what I'd like to do with Wild Hunt Festival is in between some of these releases, even in between the micro releases that happen far more frequently than the expansions, putting up content to learn more about characters, to learn more about the world. It might just be kind of a journal entry that details a part of Eastern Cradia. It might not even have a story. It's just like a lore dump. But then some of these web novels might be a multi-entry thing that tell a longer story. And again, this sort of speaks to this larger idea of we have taken a boss battler. Like Kradia Wild Hunt Festival 2021 is a boss battler. And we said, okay, this game can be a lot more than that. The core of it is a boss battler. And if you distill that down even further, like it's a puzzle game. But it can be all these other things too. The boss battler thing is like the center nucleus, and then we're building all these spokes off of it, right? So while I'm very excited about Dankai and I'm very excited about Anniversary, quite frankly, for me, like I'm most excited about Aria because I like how bite-sized it is. And quite frankly, I really like the story it tells. And as someone who's more interested in story than gameplay in most things, it just sort of speaks to me. But that also kind of speaks to what we're trying to do here. Something for everyone. It's not just like price point for everyone. It's like, what do you want out of your Wild Hunt Festival game? Because we've got that for you too. You want a ton of content, get Anniversary. You want a little less content, get Dankai. If you just want to get in and get out with something small, grab Aria. You'll need some content, so the other games. So you might not be able to just buy that one by itself, but you get the point.
Asterisk, Aria is not a standalone product.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
It almost is. It almost is.
Very close.
Yes.
Right.
Dankai's
But,
standalone, Anniversaries standalone, but all of them can be merged to play together.
And I'll drop just a little extra on top of that.
Do it.
Because we did get a question earlier, and I think that we should segue into those shortly. I'm going to answer that now. If you remember the Tri-Guild challenge from way back when,
It's a deep cut.
I'm going to say two things. One, it is coming back. Not for a while, but it is coming back. And two, if you're interested in the lore of how that will come about, start reading between the lines. And that's all I'll say.
So I was doing a very poor job of looking at the Discord chat. I didn't realize that I'd missed 97
I got it all.
messages. I missed 97.
I got every question on a doc whenever you're ready.
All right, let's do it. Transition to a little Q&A
right.
time.
So, for those of you that are still here, thank you so much for sticking around. We're going to jump right into your questions, top to bottom. So, first things first. I believe this one comes from Retroflow in the Line Wing Talks channel. Will this resurgence of Kradia see the return of the Tri-Guild Challenge League? Yes. Yes, it will. Again, like I said, not for a while, but it is coming. Promise. All right. Next up, will the new game also herald the return of Line Wing's best component decision to date? That being, of course, linen finished cards.
Okay. All right. So this is a deep cut joke right here. So if you've been around since the early days when we were only doing board games, you know that I fucking hate linen finishes on cards. I hate linen cards. You'll also know that if you backed Kradia Wild Hunt Festival, we unlocked a stretch goal, much to my chagrin, where we upgraded all of the card finish to linen. So all the cards in that game have a linen feel to them. Now, I hate linen. It makes me want to throw up. I do throw up a little bit when I touch a linen card. Will linen return? I mean, Fern, I think, said it before we were really getting going, and it feels like linen is sort of baked into Wild Hunt Festival. It makes a lot of sense for this game because it's what a lot of people know Wild Hunt Festival for because they bought the original game. It's all linen. It felt good. Most people like linen. I am the outcast. I understand that. So it makes sense in that regard. Also, guys, do you feel this way? Like, even though I absolutely hate it, like thematically, doesn't linen make sense for Wild Hunt Festival? Or am I just going out of my mind?
Yeah. It's
I know
a
you hate
mimic
it.
that kind of like papyrus parchment feel, in that it makes it feel like, the character boards are like an adventurer's guild like log of what this person does for the guild, right? And all this stuff with that. So all of that kind of fits that old school traditional fantasy like feel to it, and the linen finish just kind of like nails down that physical feel for it.
It is almost synonymous to the original release. Putting Kradia on the table and you feel that card, it's just how it was. I don't know. I'm at the point where I'm willing to accept not doing it, but if the people want it, I think we should.
Yeah. No, I mean, even if I have to wear gloves to handle the next game, I'm willing to make that sacrifice for the people.
Listen,
the kind of leader I am,
I'll
guys.
live stream my camera and you can tell me what moves you want to do.
Perfect. There we go. Then I never have to interface with this game.
All right. So anyway, that being said, probably the linen finish will return. Okay. We also got a question that I'm going to combine with another. Is there any chance that we'll get Kradia, the Garden of Adventurers, or the other Kradia releases?
Okay. So probably a question for me. So Twilight Ravine is the release that came out after Wild Hunt Festival. It's the third Kradia game. It's like a set collecting. I think there's some trick taking in there or whatever. Probably not on that one. Just because I'm not. If you guys have watched Lion Wing long enough, you know that I really only like publish stuff that I like, and I don't really care for Twilight Ravine. Not that it's a bad game; it's not my kind of game. So I don't think I would want to spend my own time on it. Garden of Adventures is interesting because like there's a germ of a good idea in there, but even Ramo will say and has said it's not a very good game.
Stay away from that game.
Yeah. I actually talked to Ramo this long time ago when I was first scouting, and I think it's when I found Wild Hunt Festival. I talked to him about Garden Adventures, and he was like, "Listen, maybe at some point in the future you could do that, but I wouldn't feel comfortable with you touching that game right now." So I think the concept is really cool. It's very board gamey, and I kind of dig that with Kradia. But in its current incarnation, no, I don't. That wouldn't be a good one for us.
That's fair. And I think what I would like to drop on top of that is when we were trying to find inspiration for one of the new Ikunas that's coming out, we thought it a good idea to dig back into old Kradia art and grab one of the Ikunas one of the whatever he was, Ikuna, in the older game and pull him into Wild Hunt as the stand-in for the art for this new Ikuna that we created. So I'd like to at least, reuse assets where we can in terms of making sure that, for the Western audience, that Kradia homage is still there. So, just a little addition. Next question. Regarding the studio, are only Fern and Jake able to create stuff, or is the community allowed to pitch ideas to get more stuff into the game?
Oh, I'll let you guys speak for this. I will say that like the community can and should always pitch ideas. All right, like we watch, we listen. Hell, that's how the like Wild Hunt Studio came to be. That's how Anniversary Edition came to be.
Yeah. It wouldn't, Anniversary Edition wouldn't be here, not just without us, but without you guys. Mm-hmm. Like I said, it was May, 22nd of 2022, when I posted the finalized edited document of my custom character, Rui, who is coming in Aria, by the way, to the Discord, and I edited it over top of the Summer Lemugia DLC, and just posted it. And after that, it was kind of just, here we are now. Shout out to Reaper's Will, and I will be cryptic about this too. Elena is still here. She is coming. But anyway, we want to hear your ideas. Fern and I are more than happy to, sit down and chat game about it. And if you guys have some cool ideas, we can workshop it and figure something out and, get more stuff to the, if there's an idea or a cool idea that we missed, why not incorporate it, right?
one other thing I'll say is that, like, yeah, I mean, a lot of the things was Jake and I just sitting around talking cool ideas for the game. But, the anniversary edition does include Summer Lemugia, which was the result of a fan contest that created a new character. And while Ramo may not be the one creating a new character based on a new fan contest that comes out with this Kickstarter, uh, we always thought that, hey, another fan contest where people get to send in their own concepts for like what kind of character they want to do, and then it's a workshop with us and like put it down into something that functions pretty well. That's always a cool thing that we could do. Um, and in addition, like, yeah, Rui and Haruno, if you remember back in the day, back when we originally got together, and this is actually how Jake and I met, uh, is that uh, Jake threw up a character. I was like, oh, that sounds like a fun thing, like exercise to do. I made a character based off of another game, which I won't speak of for most part because it's not relevant anymore. But we ended up chatting these things, and then we kind of mashed that together, and that's how we ended up with Arya, in kind of putting those two initial characters into something. And you'll also know that there was another project that we kind of worked on and brainstormed with the community. Reaper is definitely one of those people that showed up for that. I know it was mainly just Jake and I for it, but that is one of those things that we kind of like took in. We're like, we're gonna just keep making stuff, see what happens, see what works. And if ideas come from the community, and if people want to be like, hey, there's some really cool concept here, and I want it to like work in a way, even if it doesn't make it in a full release, Jake and I will definitely be willing to talk about it because we love this game and we love talking design principles and philosophy.
Amen. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah, and I mean, like Fern said, from the get go, like fan involvement was involved in this game, starting with that fan contest that made its way into Summer Lumugia, which was a DLC and is now being printed for Anniversary Edition. So a lot of Wild Hunt Festival has been built off the backs of fan involvement.
Absolutely. All
That's
right.
why we're getting a
Next
component
question.
upgrade in Anniversary. That's really
Yes.
cool and we want to show you, but we don't have a real component for it yet. It's going to be a solution to a problem that I think a lot of people have, uh, and it's going to be really cool.
We'll be talking about that in a future episode for sure. All right.
Mhm.
So, next up is how is lore going to be handled from here on out? Is Wild Hunt Festival kind of getting spun off into its own separate canon?
Yes, it is. Certainly,
For the most part, yeah.
yeah, I mean, everything has to be ultimately run through Ramo and approved by Ramo, and he's going to be comparing it against his own notes about what this world is. However, that being said, anything that comes out in an official release is canon because it will have already passed through multiple approval states, and if it makes it to print, then that's official. That's an official thing that exists in the world.
Yeah. Great question, too.
Yeah, I love that.
I can, again, pull something from development with Ramo. Ramo has never been like, no, this can't happen. It's more of a, he looks at it, figures out a way that it will work, and just make a couple small changes, which is great. Okay. Next question. So for this game, were you guys doing acrylic standees for characters or anything like that?
Yeah, so we talked about this, and certainly if you follow Liner Notes Twitter, you've seen that Ramo has made some acrylic standees. And for a while, that acrylic standees were going to be a part of the Kickstarter. And then ultimately, we decided that we were not going to go that route just because they don't have a gameplay purpose like at all. They look really cool. And if there were going to be acrylic standees for Wild Hunt Festival, they would have made the most sense for Kratia Wild Hunt Festival 2021 because the card that you spend so much time looking at, your hero board, shows only the portrait of the character. And so at the time, it would have made sense to have an acrylic standee so you could see the full body art of that character. That's not the case anymore. The new UI and the new card hero board allows you to see the complete character illustration. And so not only do they not have a gameplay purpose. They also now don't have sort of a visual purpose other than like for people who like acrylic standees, in which case, like, sorry, we don't have one for you this time around. But listen, we definitely talked about it, and it was definitely going to be a thing for a while. It was
in the
on
cart for a long time.
Yeah, it had actually made it so far that it was on the back end plain text Kickstarter project page. I was like that confident we were going to include them, and then we didn't.
Yeah. Okay. So I've got one more question here, and I think this is the perfect one to end on. So since all this stuff is being released for the game, how is storage for this going to happen? Big box enough to hold everything sleeved and unsleeved, or all separate?
Say that last part one more time.
I don't think it's relevant. The question overall is, what's the storage solution going to look like?
Okay. So we do have a storage solution, and it is going to come in the form of a box set that we're going to be offering in the campaign that will fit all 3 releases in a single box, both Anniversary, Dankai, and Aria. That will come with its own box art. It'll be a different box, obviously. It's going to be a bigger box. It's got to fit everything. And so you can look forward to having an all-in-one storage solution for all these different products that are coming down the pike.
And if you know anything else about Inside Jokes with Bradley, you'll know that he also hates sleeves. So we also have a solution for that. As you might have remembered, the little like item skill and charge attack cards, those were a weird size. They are being changed to standard playing size. So if you're familiar with Magic the Gathering or poker cards, those are all the same size. So you can sleeve those. I recommend clears, like non-matte clears for skill cards because they are double-sided. So you can sleeve those. I don't know if we'll have an incorporation that will hold them sleeves, but personally, I recommend things like Burger Token, which is not sponsored. Really good way to store your sleeve cards. So there are solutions to that. They will fit in the box because the box will have some extra space in it. And there are a couple wonkily sized cards. There are a couple that will be big commander size is what I call them, if you know the oversized MTG cards. And the player boards are A5, which you might be able to find sleeves for. I actually haven't looked. Those don't really need sleeves a lot of times because you don't shuffle them. So there is a storage solution that involves sleeves, and it is mostly just the it is mostly just sleeving the item cards and those things and putting it all in the big box.
Yeah. So the dream, hopefully, and Bradley can correct me if I'm wrong here, is to have a solution that will stand you, hopefully, the test of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Will the cards be marked for the mini expansion story in case they get mixed up in the others? We actually have a solution to this. So
We do.
Dankai Survey Brigade has a couple cards. It also needs a couple item cards that we're adding into Dankai Survey Brigade because it was not a standard release. Those will almost definitely have a little Dankai Survey Brigade watermark on them, so you do not shuffle them into the item deck. Everything else, like characters and skills, you can put in with the other characters because you can use any character in anything. And the bosses will be very specific to themselves, so they will also have some sort of like Dankai watermark on them as well. It's pretty easy to tell them apart from the challenge bosses from the original game. So everything that you'll use for Dankai is very easy to tell that it's for Dankai, because it's either a card unique exactly to Dankai, or it is a watermarked version of a normal item card.
Someone just said linen sleeves. That makes me. I actually feel nauseous right now thinking about that. A linen sleeve.
If you can find double-sided linen sleeves for the skill cards, that would be the optimal.
That would be the ender.
So yeah, no, that really actually makes me want to die. I see. Hold on, we got a question over in YouTube. Is the tiger character male or female on the YouTube image?
Great question.
Great
That is
question.
Kemuri.
Do we? Yeah.
Do you want the original answer or the new answer?
I
Jake?
think we give no answer right now, and we save that for a deep dive when we go into Donkai.
Sure,
right.
sure. Okay.
Then the only answer I will give is that Kemuri is a Hucronus, which you might be able to tell, which is that kind of like animal person.
We also
Excellent.
We also got something in Lion Wing Talks chat. I think. Let's see here.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. When is Wild Hunt Festival tabletop RPG?
I mean,
Maybe someday.
yeah, I mean, maybe someday if Ramo had more lore, or if he just gave us the ability to go wild with the lore and to take full creative control of it, then I think a TTRPG is absolutely a possibility. And I would love to be able to build a game, an RPG within this universe. There's so much storytelling potential here. Art's amazing. I can picture the page layout in my head. I would love to do it. Is it in the cards right now? No. Now I will say, this is related but not related at all. So Ramo, principal designer, he's in Hong Kong, and there was recently the first commercially released Hong Kong TTRPG that was released sort of like under the radar. I don't see really many people talking about it, called Stardust Fairy Tale. Oh God, its art is so good. Now that's a TTRPG that has tethers to Hong Kong, which is where Ramo lives, that I absolutely am trying to do something with. I'm having a hard time tracking down contact information for this person. While that's not Wild Hunt Festival, it is something that I'm trying to do something with.
Okay.
And you'll also know that Jake and I love tangents, so don't give us any ideas. It might happen 10 years down the line if we get bored enough.
You know what? I'm holding Steam Build Riders right now in my hand. Wild Hunt Festival would make a really, really good Lion Wing quick playbook. Really good. Like Steam Build Riders, it's A5 size and it's 81 pages. And you figure it's not actually 81 pages because there's a ton of charts and art, right? So it's really like 60 pages. We could totally do that if we could convince Ramo to either approve all the shit we come up with, or for him just to say like, yeah, right, whatever. Or if he had that Bible that I want him to have that he doesn't have, which he's not going to write anytime soon.
It'd be an interesting exercise for sure. I'd love to obviously we'd take a look at it. So charge attacks in a TTRPG?
It could work.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm assuming that wraps us up. We hit everything on the docket, right?
Yes, I believe so. So,
Okay.
yeah, I would say, barring the first 15 minutes of me fumbling through OBS, this was this was a good episode 1. I don't know how often these are going to happen.
Well,
Monthly?
you go figure that. Well, actually, did you want to give them a release window again when the Kickstarter can be expected to go live?
I guess I should
We touched on
probably
that.
do that. I didn't even talk about that.
Yeah.
So I can't give you an exact release date. I can give you a release window though, and it is going to be this spring. So that is quarter two. And we're coming to the end of quarter 1. Obviously, that's quarter 1 ends later this month. So at the end of this month, so it is around the corner. I would say, in terms of like spring / quarter 2, we're sooner rather than later in quarter 2. Let me just say that. Like, we're pretty much ready to go. I'm actually just waiting on 2 pieces of art so I can make a box render and then the marketing will begin. Now, my marketing team has said I don't need those to start the marketing. And so it could happen before then if I listen to them, and I probably should. This is what they do. But I'm also like, hey, I've made it 8 years doing this thing. I might know what I'm talking about a little bit. So I'm kind of holding out until I get the box art for two things. And then the marketing begins. I'll need 5 weeks of marketing before the campaign goes live. Now, here is something that I'm not sure of yet. Because Wild Hunt Studios is kind of spinning off into its own thing, doing its own thing, and only focusing on Wild Hunt Festival content, and because we have this like long-term vision for this IP, it is not decided yet if this campaign will run under the Lion Wing Kickstarter campaign that all the other games have been launched under, or if it will run under its own branding and its own account under the Wild Hunt Studios moniker. So I'm a little undecided there. One, I've got a built-in audience with the Lion Wing brand, obviously. So when a project goes live, it goes out to anyone who's ever backed our stuff. So that is obviously enticing. At the same time, we're not really a board game company anymore. So it's weird when the vast majority of our people play TTRPGs. Some might dabble in board games, some might play both. There's probably a good cross section that play both, but I also know that there's a large section that does not play both. So it feels a little weird for me to go to Kickstarter after having just done like 4 RPGs in a row and us being an RPG company and then putting a board game there. That feels a little weird to me because to me, the natural transition is Where's Blade. Right? That was always the plan. That was always the next thing. And then things got shifted around. Wild Hunt Festival was ready sooner than expected. And here we are. So if someone like gun to my head was like, hey, you got to choose right now. How are you going to do this thing? I'd say, hey, we're going to launch no later than May. And we're going to run it under the Wild Hunt Studios own Kickstarter account. That's all subject to change.
All right. Well, there you have it. Sooner rather than later, Q2. But with that being said, would love to lead up into the Kickstarter with another one of these episodes. Or, during the campaign, Fern and I definitely have a lot of things that we want to talk about, a lot of things we want to go over. So maybe expect like 2 or 3 or 4 of these within the campaign period. It doubles as advertising. It's a lot of us talking about stuff and, component upgrades, design principles, etc. And, maybe some community ideas too. So look forward to it. We will be on socials with those updates when we can.
Yeah, we definitely talked about doing a developer's diary.
Yeah, right.
For a lot of the Kickstarter updates where Jake and Fern just go super deep into design philosophy and all of that as it pertains to the rights of nature content that is within Donkai and, of course, Aria. So you will definitely be getting some developers' diaries, but it's when those things come out, we haven't quite determined that yet. Certainly some will release only while the campaign was live, but I think it's probably safe to assume, guys, that we'll do at least one more of these before that campaign goes live.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It feels kind of like a monthly thing, but I'm not committing to anything because, me, I'll say monthly, and that means 8 monthly. Not like 8 a month. I mean, like every 8
we'll
months.
do it.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Hey, someone in the chat said they started with Testament and then Cradia. See, you were the person who I was like, I don't know if you exist. Do people want both of these? And now, certainly, you did. Testament. Now that's a game that would be fun to revisit someday. Oh, talk about a designer who never cares to revisit anything he ever does, or who cares at all about what you do to his game when you're localizing it. Oh, Kuro, you madman. Hey, he's got some cool stuff coming out. Some very cool stuff.
Yeah. I haven't followed him at all, but speaking of going back and updating things, as another extra little thing, for those of you who are worried about purchasing Anniversary Edition with not much changed content-wise, I will say here, spoiler alert, that Manad and Urase have gotten certain buffs to their character cards, and that's it.
definitely.
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, I mean, definitely tweaks, rebalances, all that good stuff. I mean, I think Karate Wild Hunt Festival 2021 was a pretty tight game when it was released. Like, it felt fairly clean, but there were definitely some things that needed more time in the oven, right? Or like a couple more passes or a couple more play tests or something like that. And so Anniversary Edition has given us the opportunity to do that and to refine it until it can't be refined anymore. Sharpen it to the sharpest point that it can be sharpened into. So you get new stuff and rebalanced old stuff.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
All right.
So
Think that about marks it.
Yep. That does it for us. Episode 1 is in the bag, Adventurers Roundtable. Thanks so much for joining us on our first episode of Beyond the Hunt. We'll be back soon with episode 2. Thanks for all the engagement. Thanks for all the questions. Hope you guys are looking forward to this. We certainly are. Hopefully that came through tonight. And we will see you next time. Farewell.